Oh, hey everybody. I just remembered just as we were coming live that I didn't get any of the banners set up, but we'll make this happen. Oh my gosh, guys, it is the second half of the day. We've had so much great content coming on, and Dr. Tim Jackson is here with us today, this afternoon, and he and I met through Mindshare. In fact, Naomi, have you guys met prior to today, Tim?
We've talked back and forth a couple times.
Okay. So we've been on each other's podcasts, obviously, our networking, been, part of each other's life, and both are so passionate about making sure that we are helping people make healthier decisions for their lives and, making an impact. And today, Dr. Jackson is really going to be honing in on the immune system once again. He's going to be talking to us about how to get the bad stuff out, how to replenish the nutrients that we need for our immune function. He's going to be talking about optimizing variables, and trust me, you don't want to miss that. Gut health. He's going to be talking about the importance of body temperature. Do you know that body temperature is in relation to your immune system? I had no idea, and I can't wait to hear more about that. And how to modify your environment to decrease the allostatic load. And I'm all about that. And then obviously the importance of mitochondrial health. Mitochondrial health is might be a word that many of us aren't real sure what mitochondrial means. So when we get to that point, we'll make sure that we're really discussing that. And I've been making these intros really short because you guys have got so much information to share with us. But the one thing I do want to ask is sometimes we're getting questions coming in as people are watching, and we want those because if you've got the question, so do other people. We want you asking those questions. Dr. Jackson, do you want us to ask those questions as they come in or wait for those till the end?
Sure, you can ask as they come in.
Okay.
Maybe pause every 8 minutes or so.
Okay. Awesome. All right. Dr. Jackson, take it away.
All right. So when we talk about the immune system and, bolstering or bulletproofing the immune system, there's many aspects to it. You don't want to necessarily boost the immune system. You want to modulate and regulate, because if you have someone who has too much immune activity and you bolster that, then that's going to create an autoimmune or technically a neuroimmune reaction.
Are you going to talk a little bit about that? Because we've heard so much information over the past year about boosting the immune system. You need to do these things. And I might have interrupted prematurely. I'm notorious for that.
Yeah. So basically with the immune system, it's kind of like cortisol. You don't want it too high, but you don't want it too low either. If it's too low, you'll die. If it's too high, you can die, within a matter of months. But too low is even worse, in my opinion. And so with the immune system, you can have certain arms of the immune system, or one arm that is overly active and another arm that is underactive. So most people have probably heard of Th1 or T helper 1 cells, and T helper 2 cells, T helper 17 cells, T regulatory cells, and that's just the T cells. There's also natural killer cells, B cells, which is your humoral immunity, your antibodies, and your macrophages and leukocytes, and we could go on and on, but those are the main ones. And so with the immune system, you don't want to just constantly stimulate. It's more of modulate. And, one of my favorite ways that has a lot of research behind it, and they're called protein-rich polypeptides, and they're derived from colostrum. And I have a book my bookshelf about all the research they've done at the University of Texas using them in patients with HIV and AIDS. And so they're kind of like an adaptogen for the immune system. So if your cytokines, which are inflammatory molecules, if they're too low, it will raise them. If they're too high, it will lower them. And so that's one reason why I like that supplement so much. It can be used prophylactically or preventatively, but also therapeutically, so treatment-wise. And so, with the current state of affairs, it's not really the pathogen, it's the cytokine storm that happens afterwards. Yeah. And so when you can modulate the cytokine response, then you're going to feel a lot better, and tissues aren't going to get destroyed, at least not at the rate that they would have. And so, again, it's all about balance with the immune system. Now, most people walking around have, a deficiency in some aspect of the immune system. Maybe it's natural killer cells, T helper, T suppressor cells, could be macrophages. But when we talk about, and this kind of ties into the point about mitochondria, which are the batteries of your cells, but they're also a signaling system. You can have enough immune cells, but if the mitochondria aren't working optimally, then they're not going to be able to get to where they need to go.
Right.
And so mitochondrial function is extremely important in terms of immune function, as well as functioning of every other part of your body. And so, different tissues will have different numbers of mitochondria based on, their function. So the brain has a significant amount, heart, the GI tract. And so typically, one of the first places you notice mitochondrial dysfunction is brain fog, memory issues, that sort of thing.
Okay. All right. And so this proline rich polypeptides, is that something, it's a supplement and something that you would want to be taking every day, because it's actually going to, it's like smart. It says, hey, you're low, we need to raise it. You're high, we need to lower it. Right? Did I understand that?
Yeah. So, you can take it, so independent of what's currently going on, you can take it, on a maintenance dose twice a day, a few sprays twice a day. But, with what's currently going on, if you're under an extra stressors, not sleeping well, then, you can take more. If you catch a bug, let's say you stop or you run out and you catch a bug, then you can increase the dose to use it therapeutically.
Okay.
So, Dr. Jackson, is this something you can also do through food as well to increase this?
Can you use food to increase proline-rich polypeptides?
Yeah.
So PRP, not platelet-rich plasma, but proline-rich polypeptides, they're derived from colostrum. So, if you want to consume more colostrum, but this is more of a direct route. It's kind of like giving someone a protein powder versus giving them the constituent amino acids. It's very different. Their body's going to be able to use it more readily.
Okay.
With the supplement.
Well, so like with the protein shake, the amino acids your body can use because it doesn't have to work to break them down. And so colostrum, you might get some PRP from it, but your body's going to have to work pretty hard to break it down.
Got it.
And if you already have stressors other places in the body, then you're going to have trouble.
Got it. Okay. Keep going.
Okay. So
we got questions. We'll just ask.
Yeah. So with modulating the immune system, we are talking about modifying your environment and getting the bad stuff out. So I'll talk for a few minutes about getting the bad stuff out, because the more harmful stuff you get out, the less supplementation you need.
Right.
And so one common immune suppressant are mycotoxins. And, different mycotoxins have different effects on the body, but the one common denominator is that they all suppress the immune system. And so most people don't know that they have mold, but if they do a test, they can certainly see that they do. And once they get rid of it, they feel more energetic, smarter, sleep better, lots of things start to fall into place. And so, when we're talking about getting the bad stuff out, there's kind of there is a hierarchy into doing that. And so getting mold and mycotoxins out first is the most important. And then secondly, metals. So things like mercury, aluminum, lead, and it has to do with the molecular weight of the mycotoxins. And so, if you try to get the metals out before you get the mold out, you're kind of just wasting it. And so, in terms of getting the bad stuff out, we talked about mold, we talked about metals, and then microbes, so pathogenic infections, stealth pathogens, whether it's in the small intestines, so SIBO or SIFO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, or small intestinal fungal overgrowth, or the large intestines. So it could be an opportunistic bacteria like Klebsiella pneumoniae. So 74% of people with rheumatoid arthritis have Klebsiella. And so, they release lipopolysaccharides or LPS into the bloodstream. And, if you told me, hey, I'll give you $1 million to make someone feel really bad, I would drop a syringe of LPS because that will create a cytokine storm. And they've actually shown, this is getting a little off topic, so you can rein me back in, but they've shown that the amount of amyloid plaque in patients with Alzheimer's is directly proportional to the amount of gram-negative bacteria in the gut.
Wow. We're learning more and more and more the connection between the gut health and the brain health. I think if we haven't heard that yet, we've probably been under a rock, but there's such a huge connection. I want to go, and I think Naomi's got a question here too, but I want to go back because sometimes we speak in terms that I want to make sure everyone is understanding. So when we say mycotoxin, because you hear me talk about toxins all the time. So mycotoxin is a man-made toxin, correct?
Well, so it just means it's a toxin that comes from mold. And so it doesn't have to be man-made.
Which is the man-made one? Myotoxins? There's a name for it.
There's several, but mycotoxins, it just means it comes from mold. And so, you can get the certain mycotoxins if there's massive amounts in the soil and you're playing in the dirt. But typically, it's the mycotoxins that we acquire indoors that are most problematic. And what happens is mold behaves differently indoors than it does outdoors. And so, you might have a relatively small quantity indoors, but because we've given up energy efficiency or circulation for energy efficiency, we don't exchange of indoor and outdoor air. And so, that creates an issue. And the way most homes are constructed today, like I watch some of those construction shows since I've been quarantined. And, the good contractors, they talk about, not only mold remediation, because, I can test and then connect you with a company to remediate the mold. But if you don't make the proper structural changes, you've just wasted 10 grand. So, it's about the slope of the land. It's about where the water's draining, if there are cracks in the foundation. And if you think about it, most neighborhoods, you see new construction, they may put up the foundation and then not come back for 2 or 3 weeks.
Right.
And so it's being exposed to the elements. Now, these materials are becoming more popular where it's much more difficult for mold to grow on them. And so that's becoming something that's, more popular. And it's just an issue where, the contractors are allowed to get away with it because the general public is not knowledgeable about it. And unfortunately, our judicial system doesn't punish people, who cut corners like that because they don't really understand mold themselves. And they're going to pull a traditional doctor in there and they're going to be like, well, I don't think mold's a problem at all. When actually, I have a colleague who died from aspergillosis, systemic aspergillosis.
Well, and it's hugely important that, it's this airflow. We're building a house in Iowa right now, and I have this head full of knowledge that's probably not okay in the whole building world, let me tell you, because that house has stood there with the wood exposed to all the elements that are going on in Iowa. And I'm like, honey, when are they going to get it wrapped and siding put on it? That is all getting absorbed into, oh, no, it's fine.
Yeah. No, I mean,
I understand what you're saying about building. It is that, you might move into a brand spanking new home. We associate mold with these older homes, that damp, musky smell, in the basements, but it's everywhere.
Exactly. And if people don't remember anything else I say, just know that most species of mold you can't see or smell. You can see Stachybotrys, which is black mold, and so that's obviously very dangerous. And that's might have been what you were referring to because there is a man-altered version that has been used as a biohazardous weapon or bioweapon. And so, with the construction, you do the best you can, but ideally you consult with a healthy building architect or a building biologist. Depending on where you're located, and they can work. Ideally, they'd work with the contractor, because let's say you purchase a home, and then you find out later it's going to have or it has mold in it. Well, that's going to cost you a lot of money. So, $350,000 house just became a $450,000 house,
right? Because of the remediation that has to take place. Tim, I reached out to you because we felt like we had a mold issue going on in the new house that we just purchased. And what's interesting is they come in and they do these tests with the air, and they use the outside as kind of a baseline, so to speak, and there's a baseline done it within the home too, and then in multiple different areas within the house. And I'm always talking about our indoor air quality is usually 10 times worse than what the outdoor quality is. And I gotta say, inside of our home, I don't remember what the times rate was because they only give you like the rating, but it's times so many thousands,
it's a logarithmic scale.
Of spores that they detected in the air. And it was 27 times outside was what the spore count was outside, and inside it was only 4. Wow. So the inside of our home was much cleaner than even the outdoor air, surrounding us. Now, just because your indoor air quality, and here I am, I'm sorry, shut me up, is this is like a huge topic of mine. Even though your indoor air quality might be better, and ours was because I believe of the diffusing essential oils, 100% with that. But if you open up your windows, you think about it, sometimes the mold activity isn't necessarily coming from inside the house, but because you open up the windows, like if you live in a farm, for instance, and you're near where they're storing hay.
Right,
you
exactly.
might be getting it, coming in through the breeze, of your neighbor.
I used to show quarter horses, and I almost went to veterinary school. I was going to be an equine surgeon, and then got talked out of it, thankfully. But it's my theory, and I don't know if it's been proven, or tested, but horses that colic a lot, cows that colic, it's oftentimes due to the mycotoxins.
Yeah.
Oh,
Animals are so susceptible to all of the same stuff that we are. Why wouldn't they?
Directly. Yeah.
yeah.
You know what? And then if it's a cow and it's susceptible to these mycotoxins, and then we're butchering it and eating it.
Well, if you think about, dogs, their receptors in their nose, their olfactory receptors, are between 10,000 to 100,000 times stronger than ours. And so, you look at this explosion of cancer, diabetes, and other things in dogs, and I would say that's definitely a contributing factor.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, not to mention what they eat.
Yeah.
Just saying.
So I have a question in regards to how do you know that you have mold issues, and is there testing you can do, and like even the heavy metals and everything like that?
Yeah. So as far as the mold, there are direct mycotoxin tests that are urine mycotoxin tests. And depending on which lab you use, they'll test for a different number of mycotoxins. Like I think Great Plains tests for 9 or 10. Vibrant America tests for 20 something, maybe 30. Real-time labs, they might have modified theirs, but they used to only test for like 5. But you want to provoke it. So you don't want to just collect urine. So in order to provoke mycotoxins, you need to do something like a glutathione push or liposomal glutathione, or use the far infrared sauna in order to provoke it out of the tissues, and then wait 45 minutes and collect your urine.
Oh, interesting. What about the VCS test?
Yeah, so I got introduced to Shoemaker's work in 2009 when a colleague gave me a copy of his book, and I know the first Shoemaker certified doctor in the whole United States, and he's sort of branched off and developed some more advanced techniques. I think the VCS can definitely tell you there's an issue, but there's so many factors that go into that.
Sure.
Serotonin controls horizontal eye activity, dopamine controls vertical. There's sensory integration, in the thalamus and other areas of the brain. And so, but your eyes are just an extension of your brain. So it's all neurological tissue.
Right.
And
do you feel like it's certainly kind of a first step? Like if something comes kind of kittywampus with that test, it's certainly worth, especially if you're having any kind of the telltale symptoms physically, this test you could do, and then now we've got to dig in further.
I was lulled into a false sense of security with too many VCS test results. Okay. I would say an organic acids test from Great Plains, because they test for oxalates, but they have markers, several markers on there for aspergillus and fusarium. And so you can get an idea right there of, several areas of the body, but especially mycotoxins. And then you can look at oxalates. So oxalates are produced by mycotoxins and by candida. And so if oxalates are elevated, then there's a good chance there's mold.
Got it.
Okay. And I'm going to tell you right now, I love all this lingo. I understand all this lingo. Most people that are watching us right now are going to be going, what is Dr. Jackson talking about with even, some of this thing? So bring it down to what are some things that I just don't want people's eyes to glaze over, because this is so good. So give us the 3rd grade version of what we need to know about the mold and getting that bad stuff out.
Mold will jack you up. Mold will screw you up. And you can test for mold either directly via urine mycotoxin test. So that's just a functional medicine test that looks for mycotoxins, which are made from mold, or indirectly from an organic acids test.
Perfect. Now, my next question, because most people are coffee drinkers, I've been told that coffee is a big, depending on what type of coffee you are buying, could be loaded with mold. Is that correct?
Yeah, most brands do have a fair amount. And some people will say, oh, well, I drank this coffee and it doesn't bother me. Well, why are you needing the coffee in the first place? So you riddled me that. But the bulletproof, does a good job. And there's one or two other brands that I've come across that have been third-party independently tested for mycotoxin levels. But nut butters, so peanut butter, almond butter, those are often high in mycotoxins. And then, if you have a high amount of oxalates, which are just basically think of them as inflammatory chemicals, then, that's going to make things even worse. By consuming, the nut butters and the coffee. That's going to add to the oxalates. And also things like green smoothies. I know they're popular and they're hip and there are juice bars opening up, but if you have high oxalates, you don't want to consume green juices.
And how would you know if you had high oxalates as well?
The organic acids test.
Okay. So testing really is important, people. Like, I want people to understand that when you have a baseline, that will tell you what's going on in your body. I think so many times we don't spend the money. We'll go spend money elsewhere, but yet we don't spend money being proactive to be able to sort of know what we're dealing with.
Well, and I was just thinking about that. Here's the thing. I spent, let's call it 5 years, trying to figure out what was wrong with my body. I knew that I had all kinds of different toxic exposures, but it wasn't until I actually got into testing and spending the money on the testing that I really started. I mean, I had results early on, but to really get that true transformation was with the testing. So some tests can be upwards to $500, but wouldn't you rather spend that now? Because honestly, you're going to spend $500 on programs, on supplements, on product, on you name it. And maybe you're actually causing more damage to your body because you're trying to correct what's not broken.
Yeah, so if you're spending $5 or $6 a day on Starbucks coffee, cut that out and for a month and a half and you got your test right there.
Yeah. So what else can we be doing to basically regulate our immune system?
So, yeah, we talked about getting bad stuff out, modifying our environment. So touching on some things that don't necessarily seem related to the immune system on the surface. One is EMFs, so electromagnetic fields. And I don't mean the beneficial ones like when we ground or earth, walk barefoot on the grass or dirt, but the non-native EMFs. So 5G, 4G, Wi-Fi, cell phones. Women should never carry cell phones in their bras or their back pockets. I see people doing that all the time. And there's one brand of clothing I know that they make bras and underwear for women and boxers for men and t-shirts for both that has been shown through independent testing to not completely mitigate, but to help mitigate the harmful effects of EMFs.
Nice.
And one thing to note is that mycotoxins, when they experience non-native EMF fields, they feel like they're being attacked. So they secrete more mycotoxins.
Interesting.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense.
What can we do in regards to the EMFs? Because we now live in a world of,
5G.
Cell phones, 5G, everything else. So what are some of the things that we can do to protect ourselves and, lower the risk?
There are certain, like I have one on my cell phone. It's all beat up, but I'm more about functionality than aesthetics. And so it's called Defender Shield. And I learned about it from Ben Greenfield. There are things that you can put underneath your computer. I had one that I left at a hotel in LA. but it's called a HeraPad, and it helps to mitigate some of the EMFs.
Mm-hmm.
And ideally, like my friend who practices in Atlanta, his entire office, they hardwire in to the Ethernet.
Mm-hmm.
And I tell people at the bare minimum, turn your Wi-Fi off at night, because you're not going to be coding, in the middle of the night. And so and then also there's a couple of websites where you can plug in your zip code or even your full address, and it'll tell you, the amount or estimate the amount of EMFs that you're being bombarded with. Mm-hmm. And there is at least one app that will convert EMF waves into sound waves. Mm-hmm. So you can hear it. It's like a machine gun, mm-hmm. and that tells you what you're constantly getting hit with, and we're ultimately bioelectrical beings. So, what we've talked about mostly is biochemistry, but biochemistry is driven in large part by the biophysics.
Yeah.
And so the biophysics, of the EMFs or non-native EMFs and not getting electrons. That's why, if you're exposed to artificial blue light and a lot of EMFs and mold, and you don't ground or practice breathing or hug a tree, you're not donating those electrons back to your body. And when you're electron deficient, that's pro-inflammatory.
Okay, now hang on a second. I want you to back up with this. You talk about grounding and hugging. Let's take that, and let our people know, because this is like free. This is free stuff. You can go out. It's not going to cost you a penny to be able to do. For those that haven't heard of grounding, can you tell us what that is?
Sure. So basically that's reconnecting with the Earth's natural magnetic field. Right. That natural magnetic field is referred to as the Schumann resonance. Mm-hmm. And so the thing I compare it to is if you go outside after a rainstorm and you feel sort of euphoric, mm-hmm. those are the negative ions that are making you feel that way. And so when we ground or we earth, we're donating electrons to our body. Mm-hmm. And that is helping to drive our cells to work more efficiently and better and communicate better, because at the cell membrane, the charge should be minus 70 to minus 90 millivolts. And when that gets altered, then you get organ dysfunction and tissue dysfunction and then whole body dysfunction.
How long do you recommend doing that for?
I would say at least 10 minutes a day. Mm-hmm. I have something called a Magnetico. It's a pad that come in different strengths. Mine's 10 Gauss, and it's underneath my mattress. And so it kind of recreates that natural magnetic field. And then, I have a biomat that also donates electrons to your body.
Right. So that's a PEMF mat, correct? The biomat?
It's not PEMF. It's just infrared waves.
It's just okay.
And amethyst crystals that heat up.
Yeah. Okay.
And so it's increased microcirculation and donating electrons.
I love it. What about for those that say, like it's wintertime where Naomi is in Minneapolis, there's snow on the ground. How do we get out and ground then?
Well, a lot of people would argue that you need to ground anyways. And you're getting kind of a 2-for-1 deal, because you're grounding, but you're also doing like a cryotherapy session. And so, you could alternatively go out and just hug a tree, but you got to trek through the snow to get there. And, Can
I have you over for dinner? Because my husband and my children make fun of me for grounding and like and tree hugging. And so
tell them to get their collective minds right.
Okay, I will. But you know what? What's been my struggle right now is because I'm healing my leg, I have not been able to get outside because of just the elements. It's been my change. So what would you do then in regards to that if you're not being able to get out to do these things?
Yeah, so that's where having things like a biomat or a Magnetico help. And then, turning off your Wi-Fi that's not going to add electrons to your body, but it prevents some of the harmful effects of the native EMFs.
Right. The other thing I would recommend with the Wi-Fi router is distance is important too. So make sure that is not in a place that you are actively congregating in. Put it somewhere where it's away from the spaces that you are spending the most time in.
Absolutely. Definitely. Yeah. You know, you don't need to have it anywhere close by. And honestly, I mean, for your overall health, you need to kind of get away from technology after 5:30 p.m. So, I mean, there are courses that I want to do, but they, you know, are holding lectures at 8 p.m. Eastern night. I'm like, I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
And so
your sleep has got to be so much better.
Yeah.
You know, there's so much to be driven with that. And there are also too, there are systems that you can put on your electric panel that are going to guard the house from the EMF. You know, and again, if you can hardwire, you know, those earbuds that so many people use that are no, you know, wire yourself in as you know, as much as you can or when you have to.
Right. Absolutely.
Besides modifying our environment now, taking care of the toxins, the mold, what else?
So, you know, replenishing the beneficial nutrients. And so, you know, your B vitamins, if your gut's been messed up, you know, all your nutrients are going to be at a non-acceptable or non-optimal level. Vitamin C, vitamin D, I know, you know, Amy's going to ask me this question because I recommend people go outside and, you know, get direct sunlight because we get a lot more benefit than just vitamin D from it. But, you know, if you live in Minnesota or someplace that doesn't get a lot of sun, there are different lamps that they certainly don't replace the sun. But if you combine, you know, a couple different types of lights, one's called a Sperti lamp, SPERTI, that can help to mimic some of the effects of the sun. And I think it's been cleared to advertise for seasonal affective disorder.
I wonder if you could use that instead of this stupid ring light.
Probably.
You know, so you get the light in front of you, like when we're doing things like this, but it's also a beneficial light.
Yeah. You know what?
I mean,
biohacking.
I have a friend who's a doctor in California, and he replaced all the overhead blue lights with red and amber lights. And, you know, people first thought it was kind of weird because, you know, they thought it was the red light district, but they got used to it.
That's what my husband, what's that movie from, like the 70s or 80s or some movie? Because I had, little side note, on our each side table, I've got a red light bulb into mine, and he hates when I have that on, or my red light therapy that I do at night. He's like, what is it, Ambria? What? There's some movie, movie.
I don't remember, but I have a red light therapy device, and then I have a separate Therasage portable sauna that has red light boxes in it.
I got my salt lamp on red.
Awesome.
You know, that goes on and off in my infrared sauna over here next to me. Oh my gosh, this has been such great information. You know, replenish the nutrients. We've got, you know, get out the bad stuff, modify the environment, get yourself out and grounding. And I like how listening to modulate and regulate, you know, because honestly, you know, prior to listening to you talk, that's what we hear. We got to boost the immune system, but it makes more sense that everything in the body, it's all about balance, right? It's all about bringing everything into balance, the good, you know, bacteria, the bad bacteria. So the immune system, why wouldn't it be any different?
Right. And then, you know, as far as the mitochondria go, to optimize those. One, getting mold and mycotoxins out because they interfere directly with mitochondrial energy production. Two, grounding helps because you're adding electrons. Three, working on supplementing with nutrients like L-carnitine, coenzyme Q10, or one of my favorites that you can use to replace coffee, and that's molecular hydrogen. And so molecular hydrogen, it's an uber small molecule that is able to get into the mitochondria. And so, you can have a supplement or a nutraceutical that has the right ingredients, but if it's not the right size, it can't get to where it needs to go.
What about the hydrogenized water? Like I was showing the other day. Yeah.
So after speaking with Dr. Debbie Hamilton at Research Nutritionals, because I had one of those bottles, it was like $85. I dropped it and broke it a few years ago. But she said they don't add an appreciable amount of molecular hydrogen to the water, so you won't notice a significant difference. And because I tried that first, and then I bought the tablets. Now, I have a machine that makes the water, and it has a nasal cannula.
Oh,
interesting. Love it. What's the parts that you need to have? I mean, what do they say? What do you need to? Is there like a parts per whatever?
How many parts per million?
Yeah.
So I think the higher the better in general, but 9, 10, 11 around there, you'll start to notice a benefit.
Okay.
And when you start correcting the mitochondria, because molecular hydrogen helps to heal the mitochondria you have, and it helps to stimulate the production of new mitochondria. And so, you'll notice some benefits in the beginning and then other benefits as time goes on.
Love it. I love that. Okay. Trying to look back to my topics. Tim, we've been going long. Why we think we can do this in 30 minutes is beyond me. So I'm not even worried about time anymore, but just watching it so I can get to the next one is, how can people get a hold of you? Do you have a website? Because I did not post that up, and I apologize. We got to yapping and.
Yeah, it's healyourbody.org.
Heal.
Your body.
Okay, let's get that up here so people can see that. And then, yep, I got it. HealyOurBody.org. So that's how people can connect with you. Any special offerings, anything that you want to leave the audience with as we close up?
Yeah, so I'd like to offer 20% off an initial consultation with me, and just in the subject line of the email, put Toxin Terminator 24. Okay. And that way I'll know.
Toxin Terminator. Can you do me a favor? Are you in the group? You're in the Transforming Women's Health group, right?
Yeah.
Okay, because we're going to jump right from here to another one. Would you mind going in and putting a static post in there with your website, how to connect with you to schedule that call, and then the code that they'll want to use? Would you mind doing that for our audience so that they have that?
Yeah, I'll do that.
Awesome. I appreciate that so much, because then that way everybody's got that information there. Any further immune modulating and regulating. It makes me feel like I'm in a dance. Modulating.
The last one, and I know this is diametrically opposed to what the powers that be are saying, but you need to be around people. The greatest threat to the human organism is social isolation. And so the things they're telling you to do are the very things that would prevent an infection to begin with. Outside, getting sunlight, spending time with others, that are positive. It positively affects your vagus nerve. So, don't neglect the things that are free.
Hug. We're missing and craving.
Yeah, there's a coffee shop here. One coffee shop here that says, take your mask off. We want to see your beautiful face.
Oh, I love it. I'm one of those, and everybody will be like, oh, I think I've worn a mask twice since the pandemic came out. I'm like, not putting it on.
Yeah, I know. And I have a patient who's has respiratory issues, and so she can't wear one. And she gets bullied when she goes out to the store.
It's I've had two people say something to me in this entire time, and that's their issue, not mine. And so I just don't even respond to it, because it's, we each get to decide what works best for us. And,
Right.
As long as we live in a society that continues to think and do that way, I think we'll be okay. But as soon as we get into what has happened, like your friend who's gotten bullied, they don't stop to bother to ask, hey, is there a reason? Is there an issue? And we said to somebody, because somebody asked me, well, do you have how come you're not wearing a mask or something like that? And I said, because I have a brain and I think for myself.
I love that.
And it was, but it just, I just think so many times everybody thinks that everybody needs to be thinking the same way they do. And that's the beautiful part of, we're this whole culture pot, we're this whole area. Our country was founded on the fact that we could have varying opinions and different beliefs and different philosophies and be free to express those. And
yeah, absolutely.
Sorry, I'm going off onto
it's being slowly eroded.
It's gotten absolutely crazy. So anyways, Dr. Jackson, thank you so much for coming on today and sharing with us.
Thanks for having me, you guys.
You bet.
All right.